The best way to learn a new language is through immersion. For the rest of us, there's a second best way to learn a new language, and that's Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Babbel's speech recognition technology is like having a fluent tutor with you all the time. I'm super eager to use Babbel to improve my Japanese pronunciation and the accent. Babbel offers conversation-based learning with science-backed cognitive tools like spaced repetition. Here's a limited time special deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/weirdest. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/weirdest. That's spelled BABBEL.com/weirdest. Rules and restrictions may apply. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Therapy is a great way to avoid bottling up, at least as Rachel puts it, petty grievances, incandescent rage, and everything in between. You know, the stuff that really frosts our flakes. And as a chronic bottler-upper myself, I find therapy mega useful. If you're interested in therapy and just don't really know how to get started, you might consider checking out BetterHelp. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you'll get matched with a therapist. If they're not a good fit, you can switch at any time for no additional cost. Take a moment. Visit betterhelp.com/weirdest today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/weirdest.
At Popular Science, we report and write dozens of science and tech stories every week. And while most of the stuff we stumble across makes it into our articles, we also find plenty of weird facts that we just keep around the office. So we figured, why not share those with you? Welcome to The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week from the editors of Popular Science. I'm Rachel Feltman.
I'm Amanda Reed.
And I'm Annalee Newitz.
Annalee, welcome back to the show. It's so great to have you.
Yeah, it's so fun to be back. Thanks.
And I asked you on here because I just wanted to have you back on the show, but my excuse was that you have a new book out. Would you tell listeners what it's called and a little bit about what it's about?
Sure. So it is called Stories Are Weapons, Psychological Warfare and the American Mind.
Ooh.
And yeah, I know it sounds very ominous. It's a history of psychological warfare in the United States. So it's kind of scratching my itch of looking back at history and using history as a way of understanding the present and the future. And one of the things I found as I was looking at the United States' unique relationship to psychological war is that a lot of really bad science has been kind of shoveled into the way that we conduct propaganda and psychological operations. So a lot of the book deals with how the language of science, particularly from psychology and anthropology, but also later data science too, and how that's been kind of appropriated and weaponized and used not just in military engagements, but also now in culture wars as well. So there's a lot of great history and bad science in this book.
Ooh, so interesting. I have a copy. It's been on my TBR pile, and I think I'm going to dive into it this weekend. So I'm very excited, and listeners should definitely check it out. So let's get into the show. On The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week, we start by each offering up a little tease about some kind of fact or story we found in the course of reading, writing, reporting, etc., and decide which one we just absolutely have to hear more about first. Then, once we've all had time to spin our little science yarns, we reconvene and decide what the weirdest thing we learned this week actually was. Asterisk. Listeners who know, it's fine. Amanda, what's your tease?
All right, my tease is, and Annalee, I think you will like this one. We were all talking about cats earlier, and this one is cat related. So my tease is huffing your cats and your loved one's armpit is connected.
All right. Two things I respect if other people want to do, but not really a thing I do. Or do I? I don't know. Maybe you're about to blow my mind. Annalee, what's your tease?
Sorry, I was still hung up on huffing as like some kind of like scientific method. Like the methods section is like huffing. Is that weird?
It's like in chemistry lab when they tell you to waft.
Totally.
Sometimes the procedure says huff, and then you're like, whoa, we're in for a weird day.
The only
Do you huff in like microns or what is a huff? A unit of huff?
that would be future weirdest thing topic. What is how do you measure a huff? No, but I've only heard huffing used in connection to paint and or glue. So
Right,
and it's also a
Same.
great word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. You can, also it's like the three little pigs and then paint and glue. It's a very unique word in that way.
The trifecta.
Annalie,
Anyway,
what's your
sorry.
tease?
Yeah, sorry
No,
to
please
divert.
finish.
So my tease is a paper about a robot who is purpose-built for delivering food, but has both wheels and legs, and has many strange encounters in a city. It's kind of an epic journey, a tale of going on a quest.
Yeah, the classic hero's journey.
It is. It's
For a
a
wheeled
quest.
robot.
It's a quest narrative starring a very cute robot that looks basically like a kid's wagon,
Oh,
but can move on its
wonderful.
own.
Obsessed.
I'm
Already.
very excited for this sequel to WALL-E.
I'm like, somebody write the kids' book right now.
Yeah, it writes itself.
My tease is that I want to talk about primates other than humans using medicine, self-medicating, if you will, in all sorts of ways. But I think the use of the word huffing has really, Amanda,
Yeah.
you do know how to craft a tease. So I think we're going to have to start with that.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay. So my favorite thing to always talk about in my weirdest thing blurb yarn is how I came about this topic. So my cat Junk, yes, Junk, he was adopted 2 years ago this week.
Oh,
He is a black and white tuxedo cat who is just like a weird little guy. I've done the bad pet owner thing where I have not provided pet photos on this call, but just imagine your standard tuxedo cat, half black face, white chest, white little socks. But he just has like a very grumpy face too, and he loves drinking water out of plant trays. So like the things that we have on the bottom of our plants to like catch any water that's overfilled, even though he has plenty of fresh, clean water. He's always like, what if I drink the water that has dirt in it?
it's interesting.
Spicy water.
Yeah,
Exactly.
true.
He's like, this is my Fiji water.
Yeah.
It's interesting because cats notoriously like sometimes will refuse to even drink water out of the bowl because it's still, and the idea is like they've evolved to be like, ooh, still water, gross. I want a gently babbling brook. So, you have those little fountains. So I love that your cat is like, the stiller and dirtier, the better.
No, literally, like anytime I have an open, like a wide cup on my desk, he'll try and stick his head into it. And I'm like, sir, like he has had coffee before. And like, thank goodness he was just doing a bit more zooming that day. So anyway, have you all seen the tweets where it's like, I love smelling my partner. I love smelling my partner's armpits.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen the tweets. I've seen the other stuff.
Other stuff in varying versions of appropriateness. So anyway,
Yes, exactly.
not to sound creepy, but I am kind of like that with Junk. I love putting my face in his fur and just taking a big ol' whiff. And I can only categorize his scent as smelling your bed after coming home from a trip. Like, it's not clean laundry. Like, it doesn't have that, like, fresh, powdery smell, but it smells lived in and homey. But it's not stinky. Very, very big distinction. So, naturally, I love to Google. My search history is a mess. So, I Googled, why does my cat smell so good? Because he smells so good. And thankfully, there are some legit answers in perfumery and olfaction. Like making perfume is just chemistry at the end of the day. So some cat owners have described their cats as smelling like cinnamon or laundry. Perfumey has even been used, and there are some specific compounds that cats secrete out of their 9 glands that give off scent that sort of contribute to these smells. So there's a ketone called 4-thio-4-methylpentan 2,1.
Rolls off the tongue.
Rolls off the tongue. It's characterized as light, fruity, or powdery. It's most strong in female cats or neutered males. Another fun fact, if you've ever smelled a black currant bush and thought to yourself, it kind of smells like cat pee or some varying level of catness, congrats. Both cat urine and black currant bushes contain varying concentrations of this ketone. So cats who give off a nutty scent are secreting a specific sort of, they're secreting this nutty smell from their pinna glands, which are on the cat's head, just behind their ears. It's nutty, it's earthy, it's similar to jasmine rice. Naturally, also what your cat sits on can affect how they smell, what they eat, what breed they are, and how much they groom themselves also accounts into how they smell. I'm sure if anyone else has brought a cat home from like a shelter or like off the street, when you first get them, those boys are stinky, stinky, stinky. But they get less stinky over time. Also, and this is where the sniffing your partner's armpits and liking how they smell factors into play. Things we love smell good to us. So our olfactory senses are probably our most primal. We release pheromones, right? And if we like the way that someone smells, it's like, all right, like they're a good partner in our little eukaryote brain. Is that the single cell organism?
Well, yeah, it is. It can be.
Okay.
It's a type of cell that has a nucleus, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking about like
we are descended from them.
Okay, perfect. I'm like high school biology. So it's like an evolutionary thing. It's a survival thing. Naturally, not to say it's a 1-to-1 comparison, but like when you think about it, it makes sense. Like,
Sure.
Okay, like I let this little guy crawl all over my desk and like, sure, he eats my plants sometimes, but I would do anything for him. Much like the way we would do anything for our partners who eat our plants and lay in the bed. Also, huffing your cat can save their life. So cat owners, I know I certainly am as a longtime cat owner, you sort of notice when they smell off or bad in some way. Like, for example, if they've peed in a corner, you know. If they peed in the litter box and the litter box smells a little funky, you absolutely know. Like if it's super fresh. And a bad cat smell can be connected to poor dental health, impacted anal glands, digestion issues, incontinence, kidney disease, urine spraying, which is definitely super common in male cats, and poor grooming. Sometimes you might sniff your cat and go, it smells like maple syrup or cotton candy. Like there's this sweet smell coming from my cat. And although we consider sweet things to be good as humans. A cat smelling sweet is not great.
Oh, no.
That can actually be a sign that your cat has diabetes, especially if you're
I was going to ask.
smelling them. Yeah. Sweet diabetes,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
urine does actually smell sweet when you have high blood sugar. It's just that now that we have better ways of testing blood sugar, most people are not like,
Sniffing the toilet
let me sniff that urine and see how you're doing. But there was a time when that was the best medicine had to offer,
Which
I also think
I
like
love.
you can smell when you have a UTI as well. Like I
Oh,
feel like
totally,
there's
yeah.
so it's we are kind of doing some sniffing around still for medicinal reasons.
That's very true.
The nose knows. The nose knows. So yeah, if you're smelling something sweet from your cat's mouth, maybe, just maybe, plan a trip to the vet, do some precautionary testing. And fun fact, it's also not just in domestic cats. So big cats like leopards, tigers, and lions have a compound in their urine called 2-AP, which smells like buttered popcorn. So
I've heard that one before. I've heard about cats smelling like buttered popcorn or big cats smelling like buttered popcorn.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating to me. There's also the thing of dogs' feet smelling like Fritos.
yes.
I've never spent enough time with a dog to really investigate their feet, so I can neither confirm or deny, but it looks like Jess has thoughts. There was definitely an explanation circulating at some point. And I think we might have talked about it on this show. It's possible.
After doing some
I love my
Exactly.
cat's stinky breath too. I was gonna say my cats are very like funky smelling. And I love it so much. And when they like lick me and breathe on me and I'm just like, oh my God, you have fart breath. I love it. I don't know why. So
The
yeah, I
brain
try
at
not to think
work.
about where that mouth has been. But yeah.
no, truly. I actually saw a comedy show last night, and the person who was performing is vegan. And they're like, I'm mostly vegan because I think about like, where has this animal been? You know, like how much dirt have they rolled in before?
That's very real. Well, I was just thinking like what's been in their mouth, what's been in their
what's been in their
GI
body.
tract. And that's a very I think that's a really valid reason to be vegan. There are any reason to be vegan is valid if you want it to be. And that one, I'm like, it's true. If I thought too much about that, I am reducing my animal product consumption once again. Periodically, I'm like, it is time to once again tighten the screws. But it's good, But no, that's something I'll keep that in my back pocket for the next time that I'm tempted to eat more meat.
It's like this guy was rolling around in the filth. You don't want to eat him. No, but a quick Google search has concluded that dogs smell like Fritos, or dogs' paws smell like Fritos, because of yeasty overgrowth in their paws, which makes sense.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, yeast, chip, all good. So, conclusion, sniff your boyfriends, sniff your girlfriends, sniff anyone else in your life, sniff your pets. The nose knows.
Well, I feel like my desire to sniff my cats has been normalized. I feel validated. so thank you.
Now I'm like, okay, like I need to do some more Googling, figure out all of the chemical compounds of my cat, and then just make my own perfume so I can wear it all the time.
I feel like the armpits are being neglected in this whole analysis here. Like, are
No,
we gonna
absolutely.
be sampling like armpits and like making sure we understand why that smells good?
Yeah.
Or maybe that's just only the armpits of those you love.
Yeah. I do think it's well, I mean, you know, your mileage may vary. I think there are probably some people who are like, the stranger the armpit, the better.
Yeah.
But I would say
True,
probably
true.
for the average person who's like, I love smelling my partner's armpits, it is probably more like that is a very saturated source of their unique smelliness, you know, and
Sets off the
yeah.
oxytocin.
yeah,
And it's like vulnerable and intimate and all that kind of
Totally,
stuff
yeah.
too. So yeah, there's a little culture that goes into it as well.
Yeah, I wrote way back in the day, I wrote a piece for The Atlantic about like scent and attraction and memory. It was a very like self-indulgent essay about like realizing that a guy I'd gone on like 2 dates with who I'm now friends with, but at the time I was like, why doesn't he want to go on more dates with me? It was a very, very 21-year-old Rachel vibe. Anyway, I like realized that he smelled like laundry. And then I was like, oh my God, now every time I do laundry, I'm going to think of this guy. Turns out that only lasted like 2 weeks. Sorry, Jeff. But I did write this essay about like, yeah, there's a lot of research on, you know, both our brains do the thing where it's like we tune out scents that we smell all the time because otherwise we would have sensory overload all the time. So I think to some extent, like the things that are unpleasantly stinky about folks and animals you're in close proximity with, your brain has kind of like dulled those out. So then it's like, oh no, this is just the bouquet that I associate with happy, wonderful feelings, even if like maybe the exact same smell from a stranger with just like, you know, their own little microbes thrown in, you'd be like, well, yeah, that's BO, man.
That gives me the
It's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back with some more facts.
The best way to learn a new language is through immersion. Living where the language is spoken and using it every single day. But jetting off to a foreign country just because we want to learn the language isn't really an option for most of us. And believe me, that would be sick. I would do that in a heartbeat. But for the rest of us, there's the second best way to learn a language, which is Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Babbel's speech recognition technology is like having a fluent tutor with you all the time. I personally am super eager to use Babbel to polish up my Japanese. Japan is going to be my next big trip for sure, and I don't really want to embarrass myself while ordering a bowl of ramen or asking someone to hand me that Pokemon plushie in a shop, which neither of those activities are inherently embarrassing to begin with, especially that second one, thank you very much. Babbel offers conversation-based learning with science-backed cognitive tools like spaced repetition. Its interactive lessons are created by real language teachers and are voiced by actual native speakers. And here is a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, you can get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/weirdest. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/weirdest. That's spelled BABBEL.com/weirdest. Rules and restrictions may apply. Big thanks to Claritin for supporting this episode and providing us with samples. Okay, so do y'all feel like your seasonal allergies are just so much worse this year? Because I definitely do. And it actually turns out it's a real scientific thing. Because our winters are getting warmer and our springs are starting earlier, that means plants are blooming sooner and blooming longer. And there's also a bunch of other stuff about the weather and climate that's kind of been adding all this pollen into the air, so yeah, if you're on the struggle bus like I am, you know, we're in this together. And luckily, for those of us who live with allergy symptoms, we can live Claritin Clear with Claritin D. Designed for serious allergy sufferers, Claritin D has 2 powerful ingredients in just one pill. They'll relieve your allergy symptoms and decongest your nose, so you can breathe better. I've been reaching for Claritin D on days where my allergies feel especially bothersome, and it really does seem to make a difference. It relieves my symptoms so well that it lets me be focused enough to smash through my gym sessions during the day and stream plenty of Final Fantasy games on Twitch at night. Ready to live life as if you don't have allergies? It's time to live Claritin Clear. Fast and powerful relief is just a quick trip away. Find Claritin D at the pharmacy counter. Ask for Claritin D at your local pharmacy counter. You don't even need a prescription. Go to Claritin.com right now for a discount, and you can live Claritin Clear. Use as directed for relief of nasal congestion, runny nose, sneezing, and itchy nose due to allergies.
Okay, we're back. And Annalie, I would love to, before we get into more animal stuff, I would love to hear about this little robot. Hell on wheels, I assume.
Yes, this robot also is, I would say, fashioned to look kind of like a cute animal. So a group of roboticists, mostly in Europe, decided to do an experiment to see how they could create. I mean, it's this highly specific thing. They're like, we need a food delivery robot for an urban area. And it's kind of this idea of the last mile delivery. Like, how do you, prevent people from having to like drive around in cars and like do deliveries in a city? And it's like, they have a lot of great euphemisms in their paper for things like cities being stinky and full of traffic and piles of garbage, which is one of the things I immediately loved about it. Like, they were like, the challenges of the urban environment include locomotion across varied terrains and the ability to navigate efficiently around complex dynamic obstacles. And you're just like, what they're just like, this is literally poop on the street.
Yeah.
Like a pile of garbage and like crumbling stairs. So they're like, okay, how do we make a robot do this? And they came to the conclusion that they wanted a robot that could go fast, so like on wheels, but it's encountering stairs and other kinds of like weird obstacles that it's going to need to climb on. So it can't use wheels exclusively. You come up against what Doctor Who fans will know as the Dalek problem, which is like when you have a bad guy who's on wheels and it encounters stairs, it doesn't really seem that bad anymore. So
I assume they didn't just make them levitate several seasons.
Oh
in.
no, they did. I mean, the Daleks.
Right? Yeah. I'm saying
so
I assume that the robot didn't also do that.
I was so deep into my Doctor Who metaphor that I was like, oh no, of course, all robots levitate. So in order to do this, they said, all right, how about if we give the robot the ability to switch back and forth between walking or trotting, as they put it, and rolling. And so this meant they had to invent a bunch of new ways to tackle terrain. Nobody's ever really tried to create a robot that does this, because a lot of robots that like walk around, like that you may have seen, like the Boston Dynamics, the famous big dog, those are all biomimetic, right? They're based on actual biological organisms, and they try to imitate the behavior of those organisms. But we don't have, as far as we know, any organisms that have both wheels and legs. So they were like, great, how do we figure this out? So they designed seriously the most adorable robot. It looks like kind of like a cross between like a baby carriage and maybe like a big dog. It has like a red chassis, and it on one end, it definitely looks like it has two eyes and a mouth that are kind of smiling. And the wheels are really big and kind of soft. Like they're almost like one of the bicycle wheels from those fold-up bikes.
Right.
In fact, the robot can fold up and sit down almost like a fold-up bike. So they're like, great, we've got this wheeled robot. How do we train it? Because again, we don't have any models for this. So they put the robot's brain inside basically a video game engine that procedurally generated a bunch of random environments. So it learned how to navigate all these random environments, just the way when we play procedurally generated video games, learn how to navigate constantly changing terrain all the time.
I mean, some of us better than others. I've DNF'd several video games because I'm like, well, I literally can't figure out how to get up this thing. So
you need to trot.
Yeah, that's
as the robot learned.
Truly.
So basically the robot played video games for a while. And then they unleashed it in Zurich, where a lot of them were based while they were doing this research. And they created this great video, which I shared with you guys earlier because I just thought it was adorable, where the robot is like kind of just going around in the city and it's climbing stairs. We see it navigating around people. We see like kids gawking at it and dogs barking at it. And it's like squishes itself really small, and it like has to climb over obstacles. And one of the things that's really cool is like you'll see it like putting along on its wheels, and then it gets to an obstacle that's really high, like it's just sort of a big cement slab, and it starts to roll on top of it, and then it kind of collapses its wheels down and starts literally walking on what looks like its elbows. And so it like kind of walks on its elbows over top and then puts its wheels down again. But at other points when it uses its feet, I'm putting feet in quotation marks, it's just kind of put the brakes on the wheels. And so the wheels are braked and it like trots up a flight of stairs. And again, it's freaking adorable. And
that reminds me of a very specific thing, which is that back when Gotham Roller Derby, the season starts June 22nd. Come out to Prospect Park. Support your local roller derby league. Anyway, back when they used to have like really tiny juniors, they still have juniors classes, but there was a time when they had classes for like actual babies. And sometimes they would play little scrimmages at halftime at the grown-up games. And the youngest group, they would have their wheels tightened all the way on their skates. So they were literally just clapping around on their stuck skates. So I'm really charmed by this robot because it will now always remind me of 5-year-olds playing roller derby.
Yeah, it pretty much is. And, you know, they have the thing that's really delightful about this paper for me was that it's full of pictures of both the robot's successes on things such as, I love, again, all these euphemisms, irregular steps, mixed surfaces. A mixed surface is literally just steps where they're completely overgrown with weeds. So it's mixed. And then there's the interventions that they had to do when the robot did not quite figure out how to get around. And so one of the interventions they had to do was, again, what they refer to as the untraversable path, which was literally the robot just like drove off the sidewalk into a giant pile of like plants and dirt and stuff. So it's like, it's not really an untraversable path. It's literally not a path. Okay. Yeah. Like it just drove off the sidewalk. So it's, you know, the other thing about this paper that I thought was so funny was, and I was talking to you about this beforehand, is how specific it is in the sense that they're like, we need a robot to deliver food. It's not, they're not doing this grandiose thing that I hear about a lot because I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area, surrounded by like AI weirdos who are like, we are going to invent the next evolutionary step in humanity. And it's like, these guys are like, no, all we want to do is deliver food. And we want to do it safely in a cute kind of creature that people won't be afraid of. And they don't have any like, discussion of like, what are the ethics of designing like something that'll have super intelligence? It's like, no, all we want to do is navigate a hallway and go up some stairs. And so congratulations to these guys for like just being like, we have one task, we're designing a robot for it. Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Yeah. Every time I've talked to, experts in AI and robotics who don't work for a startup that's trying to do AI and robotic stuff, they're always like, yeah, it's really attainable for us to pick a specific thing for a robot with artificial intelligence to do. It's like really unrealistic to be like, we'll make it can do everything. And also, then you get into a bunch of ethical implications, which you don't if it's just like, this little guy is for delivering hamburgers, and we've helped this robot be really good at that.
Yeah. I mean, I assume since they're in Switzerland, it will also be delivering a fondue. Like it has to be like, it has to have like a fondue pocket or something like that.
Incredible.
Enough towards like the tail end of my college career. I live in Pittsburgh, which has like a weird like techie epicenter. Yeah.
Also, that's where the hitchhiking robot met its demise, was in Pittsburgh.
Perfect.
So sad. But also, it was on brand for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some company tried rolling out something similar where it's like little robot on wheels that delivers food to you, and it makes me chuckle because it's like here in America, it's like, how do we get this guy to, not stop in the middle of the sidewalk and like not crash into the trash can? And then the Europeans are like, our guy goes downstairs. You wish.
Yeah. Well, also because they're thinking about a device. They're thinking about creating a creature modeled on something that doesn't exist in nature, right? So that's what I think is also really cool about it. And I have to admit, I found this paper because I'm working on a novella right now about robots, because, it's in the future. The robots are running a restaurant, as one does, as robots do. And one of the robots is a robot with legs that have wheels on the end. And I'm like, has anybody done this? Like, what would it be like? And like, she keeps having... people keep stealing her wheels, so she keeps having to replace her wheels with all different things. And I was like, what would happen if that was going on? And then I found this paper and I was like, wow, they've explained everything to me except for the part where people keep stealing her wheels. But I guarantee when they unleash these robots
that will
in
be
the
a
real
problem.
world, that will be an issue. Like, how do you recover from having your wheels stolen? It's like, oh, we've got the walking part right there. So we can just switch over.
Maybe they'll get their ideas from you.
Yeah, I'll send them my novella. I'll be like, you guys, like, I have an important contribution to your actual research. Like, I've thought about robots making noodles, okay?
I love that. Cool. We're going to take one more break, and then we'll be back with one more fact.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I've always been known to be quite an expressive person. White-hot rage, contagious joy, intense and sudden surprise, it's all there. If you watch my Twitch stream, you know this. But sometimes it can be hard to get into the nitty-gritty details behind those emotions. Doubly so if you're a bottler-upper like me sometimes. That's why therapy is a great tool to unpack the stuff that, as Rachel puts it, really frosts my flakes. I love when she says that. If you're interested in therapy and you just don't really know how to get started, you might consider checking out BetterHelp. It's all online, so you can make it work with any schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and you'll get matched with a therapist. If they're not a good fit, you can switch out at any time for no additional cost. Take a moment with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/weirdest today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/weirdest.
Okay, we're back, and I'm going to talk about some self-medicating primates. Some of them monkeys, some of them not monkeys. Back in 2022, researchers were observing some orangutans in Indonesia, and one of the 150 individuals they were watching that day had like a very nasty-looking open wound on his flange, which is the proper term for the big plate-like cheeks, the kind of the like mutton chops that they have going on in the face area. There's a picture, and honestly, I did not enjoy looking at it because it did not look fun. This poor guy had like a sizable chunk missing. And unfortunately, a wound like that isn't particularly noteworthy for researchers in the field. Males fight each other a lot, and they inflict a lot of injuries to that area. I think like that sort of face structure is like very tied to sort of, mating and like social dominance. So I guess, you kind of go for the horns. But the behavior of the wounded orangutan, who was an adult in his mid-30s, called Rakus, that absolutely got their attention because they saw him chewing up leaves and pressing them into the wound. So this was 3 days after the injury. He was ripping off leaves from this plant with the common name Akar kuning. He was chewing on the leaves, putting the juice on his wound. And then at one point they saw some like flies were kind of buzzing around. And so then he started pressing the leaves to completely cover the wound. And what's cool about this is that self-medicating in animals isn't new. And I was going to get into a bunch more examples of it, but actually I ended up finding so much to say about primates that I'm like, I'll talk more about how other animals self-medicate on another day. The kind of classic example is like cats eating grass
Nice.
to like purge them of parasites and stuff. Very annoying for you as a cat owner if your cat is just eating grass and throwing up, though. But anyway, there were a few special things about what this particular guy was doing. For starters, the plant he used is one that we know has actual medicinal properties. Humans have historically used it and continue to use it today for reducing inflammation, for killing off microbes, both bacteria and fungi, and for treating pain. And in a lot of cases of animals self-medicating, either we don't know what the potential mechanism of the plant they're using is, or in some cases, we actually like learn about like the medicinal properties of the plant from trying it out because we've like seen an animal do it, which again, I'll get into on a later episode. But yeah, this is one where it's like, okay, yeah, this is a thing that we know works specifically for the thing he's trying to use it for. And they say that his poultice was actually pretty effective. His wound closed up in just a few days. And like a month later, it was like hard to tell that anything had happened to him at all. It's also pretty unusual for non-human animals to use topical treatments. Most instances of self-medication in the wild involve ingesting certain things. And you can kind of imagine how that might be more likely to happen accidentally because like animals eat a lot of different stuff. But yeah, in this case, he was applying stuff to the wound, which again is really unusual. This may be just the second time an animal has been seen applying topical treatments directly to a specific injury. The researchers noted that active wound treatment had been observed in chimps, which is from a study that came out in 2022. Those chimps, researchers saw them, they would like catch an insect from the air and then like squeeze it between their lips to immobilize it. And then they would put it on their wound and like move it around with either their fingers or their lips and then remove the insects. And they would also do this to others, like particularly mothers would do this to their babies that had wounds. The scientists there were not actually able to like capture the insects and figure out which ones they were using and study them. So no idea what, if any, mechanism there is there, but like that did seem like pretty clear, using something as a topical treatment. And, that one's also considered particularly cool because it was also being, that was a thing you would do to care for others. There's one other supposed case of an animal using topical treatment, but it's like has a lot of caveats that I think is actually funny and worth mentioning. So this is a study from the 80s about an adult female capuchin monkey. And so she was in captivity, and the wording they use is she spontaneously manufactured and used tools to groom her vaginal area and 4 of her own wounds over a 6-month period. The wounds were from fights with other monkeys. And she like made these tools. They're known to make tools. Usually they make tools to like get and eat food. But she took this sugar-based syrup and started applying it to wounds and grooming herself. But the important caveat there is that her caretakers at the like zoo or whatever facility she was in had previously treated her with topical ointments. So it was like kind of literally a monkey see, monkey do situation. And also, at least as far as I can tell, there was no, the sugar-based syrup didn't do anything for her wounds. So it seems pretty clear that this is still cool. Like this is a cool instance of an animal being like, oh, remember when they put goopy stuff on my boo-boos and it made it feel better. So I still think it's super interesting, but it's not so much like, oh, these animals have like developed a routine of treating their wounds using goop.
Monkeys, just like us.
Yeah, they're
goop,
just like us.
Just putting goops on their bodies.
Yeah, just applying goops.
Now, do we have any like evidence of like hominins doing like facial care routines, like moisturizing?
Oh
or,
my
like...
gosh. See, there's actually a point that the researchers make where they're like, this is obviously cool, but like it begs the question, how many behaviors like this do we miss? Because there's only so much time you can spend observing primates in the wild, let alone like every other animal that might potentially do stuff like this. So they were like, all these years observing them, we saw one of them do this one time. And that doesn't mean this one guy is a genius. It means they do stuff all the time that we don't see. So I guess I would say, I think it's plausible that they do a skincare routine until I hear evidence otherwise.
We just see a monkey put on like one of those red light face masks.
I bet if you like gave one to an ape, they'd probably at least be like, this clearly goes on the face. I think they'd get it. I don't know if they'd like it enough to keep doing it, but maybe they would.
I mean, it's soothing, you know?
Yeah. And one researcher who was commenting on this, pointed out that this is a great reminder that animals don't have to understand the mechanism behind a behavior to like recognize that it's useful, like it's intelligent for an animal to recognize that there is a benefit to a thing. And while it's cool that humans have like gotten to a point culturally and intellectually that we can figure out how things work, that like there are many other animals on the planet that are still figuring stuff out, even if they don't understand the how. And yeah, in this particular case, there are still a lot of questions. It's not clear how he figured this out. Male orangutans leave home to enter adulthood. So there's no way for them to know, like, maybe where he's from, this is a really common behavior, and where he is now, it's not at all a common behavior. Also, apparently, male orangutans spend like a lot of time with their mother and not a lot of time with any other adults where they are. So it's also kind of difficult to track like how things get passed around in terms of like learning and ideas. They do think that probably, for a topical treatment to get picked up, maybe they were eating this plant. They're known to sometimes eat it. It's not a common source of food for them. And then just like one of them happened to touch their wound with the juice and was like, it has really strong pain relief effects, which is probably crucial because obviously, it takes a lot of inference to be like, oh, that juice that randomly dripped on my skin made my wound heal faster. But it's very easy to be like, whoa, that made it feel way better. And that then maybe in using it, they were like, whoa, this makes the whole process better. Like, cool, how chill. And it's also possible that, the reason that they like started to use it as a poultice instead of just like casually getting some leaf juice on there is you might remember that I mentioned that there were some flies buzzing around this guy's wound before he switched from just juice to chewed up leaves. And so that could be just like a very straightforward, use what's around you. You're already using the juice for pain relief. And now you can make a physical barrier to keep the bugs away because flies are annoying. You don't need to understand why it's bad for flies to be in your wound to not want them in your face. Oh, and one other thing I love is that they were like, okay, so we've been observing these orangutans. And like I said, they were like, we've only seen this behavior once. That makes us really wish we could observe them so much more so that we could catch all the stuff we're missing. But they did see one other possible example of like wound treatment. So this male named Pluto had an injured finger and he kept putting it into a pitcher plant, and they think the water was cool and made it feel good. And obviously that's a much simpler answer, but I think it's really sweet. Just imagining this guy with an ouchie finger being like, oh, this feels good. I'm going to keep poking this plant. And yeah, there are, when we're looking at self-medication more broadly, even just among primates, we do see other evidence of animals just figuring stuff out. There was one study where this very wounded female orangutan was eating ginger leaves and stems. And ginger, of course, has great antimicrobial properties. And in 7 years of observing her group, they had only seen 2 other individuals ever eat ginger where they lived. So this was like not a thing they usually ate. And so they were like, this very wounded female, we think, was trying to treat what was wrong with her by eating this ginger. And yeah, there's other instances of, people seeing primates eat things that we know have some kind of positive effect. But one really fun one, and does kind of come back to the skincare routine, actually, is that, again, orangutans were observed a few years ago chewing leaves, I think from the same plant. The same plant that this guy Rackus used on his face. They would chew them for like 5 minutes and then spend like another 5 minutes rubbing the lather onto their arms and legs. Oh, sorry, not 5 minutes, 35 minutes. They would spend 35 minutes lathering themselves up, like really saturating themselves. They were like, you must understand, they do this until the fur is soaked. They are so wet with the plant goo.
Spa day.
Yeah. And they would only be doing this on specific body parts, most often the arms. And again, it took a really long time. And indigenous people use this very often for sore muscles or joint pain and swelling. And it does have really, really good anti-inflammatory agents when it was studied in the lab. So researchers think that these are just orangutans being like, I'm sore, I'm achy, I'm going to rub myself all over. And so that's where the distinction comes in, where it's like, this is the first time something's been applied to a wound for healing, but actually it seems like it's pretty common for orangutans to, give themselves, it's like a little icy hot, though I don't think I don't think it burns. But, and one other cool thing about that is that they found way more females doing it, and they think it's because they carry their babies around, so their arms get sore. So yeah, apes are really smart. There are also a bunch of studies on capuchin monkeys rubbing themselves with millipedes. Millipedes have defensive chemicals that have been shown to repel mosquitoes. And they are more likely to cover themselves in millipede goo when it's wet and there are a lot of mosquitoes around. And when you give them a tissue covered in the compound that millipedes have that is known to repel mosquitoes, they won't just wipe themselves over with the tissue, they will, but they'll also start like drooling. They're like, oh man, this is gonna be so good for the mosquitoes. Anyway, those are just some examples of how animals have figured out how to make their lives better living through chemistry, as they say. And I will definitely talk more about, other instances of self-medication in the animal world at a later date. But I was just delighted. I think it's great stuff.
I always have like a philosophical question after I read papers like that, where it's like, okay, clearly, hominids are doing all this stuff that we used to think of as exclusively for humans, right? Like they have medicine, they have ways of communicating, they have cultural, like they pass on cultural knowledge, they have wars, they have, all this stuff. And it's like, at what point are we going to have enough evidence to be like, okay, they're basically people? Like,
oh man.
Like I wonder what you think. Like what do we need to prove this?
I think it's such a good question, and I was also thinking about that. And I mean, of course, there are folks who argue that we already have all the evidence we need. But yeah, I like sometimes when I read about this like really sophisticated behavior in other primates, I'm like, I think we're the stupid ones. I think we made our lives more complicated than sit in tree and like I think we really messed up. So that's also part of the philosophical question for me, is that I'm like, oh, I think sure, we've evolved a lot, but like, oh, what if we kept sitting in tree? That seems pretty dope. But I think I don't know what it would take to convince people that aren't already most of the way convinced that these are like really sentient, effectively people. But
because I feel like even if like this orangutan like saw this person observing him and was like, hey, by the way, you should try this, like just in English, like, just like, or whatever language the person speaks, like I still think they would just be like, oh, well, we have a way to explain that. That's just some sort of imitation. They're not really speaking a language, And I feel like, like maybe humans have evolved to not recognize other people that aren't human or something.
Oof.
It's sad because corvids are the same way. Like you'll see papers about crows and ravens just doing incredible things with tools and like cultural transmission, and parrots also, and you're just like, come on guys, like these are people. Let's just, I don't know what that would mean. Like if we all just acknowledged they were people, like how would we behave differently with crows? I don't know. maybe say hello more often or something.
We'd be giving them more shiny objects.
Yeah,
exactly. We would enter into like barter and exchange with them or something like that.
Man,
although I feel like they would be anti-capitalist though.
That's
they would be like, no, we do not recognize your bullshit exchange system. Like, give us the fucking sandwich.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So true. No, it's okay. We can bleep. We're
okay.
Good. I do love watching videos of that gray parrot who is learning how to identify different stuff. When he's like, made of glass.
Yes. Oh my God.
Like, this parrot, like, he's smarter than many humans I know. He's got it all figured out. He's really entered a great pistachio grift, and he's learning new things every day.
I
I definitely need to be in on the pistachio grift myself.
I recently found a pack of pistachios in the pocket of a blazer. So I'm like, okay, first of all, and they came from me. Like I recognized these pistachios. So I was like, why did I put these pistachios?
Right. Where were you going in a blazer pocket? That you were like, it'll be a great snack on the go.
Literally.
Were they in the shell? Like, was this going to be?
They were unshelled pistachios.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
good.
different.
So they were an on-the-go snack.
That's a reasonable on-the-go snack.
Yeah. Imagine having just like in-shell pistachios on the go, and it's just like, why is there this trail of pistachios? And it's just like me training that gray parrot.
And of course, if we were writing a paper about your behavior, we'd be like, well, this is very sophisticated stashing behavior. And she puts the nuts in her blazer, and then many days later, she can find them again. So it's an incredible indication of her intelligence.
Speaking of, I should find those pistachios, because pistachios, great nut.
Fantastic nut. Annalie, thank you so much for coming on. So many great stories today. And would you remind listeners What? Not just your new book, but some of your books that they can check out, because I love all of your books and I want our listeners to read all of them.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on. My new book, which is coming out June 4th, is Stories Are Weapons, Psychological Warfare and the American Mind. And my previous science book is about archaeology and ancient abandoned cities, and that's called Four Lost Cities, A Secret History of the Urban Age. And if you like science fiction, my latest science fiction novel is called The Terraformers, and it is, in fact, about a world of lots and lots of non-human animals who have opinions. So a good one to read if you're interested in that kind of thing.
The Weirdest Thing I Learned this week is produced by all of our hosts, including me, Rachel Feltman, along with Jess Bodie, who also serves as our audio engineer and editor extraordinaire. Our theme music is by Billy Cadden. Our logo is by Katie Beloff. If you have questions, suggestions, or weird stories to share, tweet us at weirdest_thing. Thanks for listening, weirdos.